Hey everybody, it's John Eric Poli here with my MMA news, and today taking a deeper look at the co-main event of UFC 290, where the flyweight title is on the line. Mexican champion Brandon Moreno will be taking on Alexandre Pantoja. Just one thing pretty interesting about this fight. Actually, we'll do a few things. Let's get right into some of the key points about this matchup. One thing is this is being labeled as a rematch. It might really, in all honesty, you could say, is a trilogy at this point because of the fact that these two actually first met up on The Ultimate Fighter at one time. I believe Pantoja was actually considered the top seed on it. Brandon Moreno was considered the 16 seed. They faced off, and Pantoja got the win via submission. Now, these guys then met again in 2018 in the UFC, and in that fight, Pantoja got the way of Moreno by way of a decision in that fight. That's what actually led to Moreno being released from the company. We'll talk a little bit about that more later on, but still, Pantoja, 2 wins over Brandon Moreno. When you think about it, you have to ask yourself, is that on the mind of Brandon Moreno as he comes into this fight? Does he say, hey, maybe this guy is just better than me? We did this twice before. I lost both times. Does it keep him up at night? Does he go back, harp on those types of losses? How many times has he been trying to go back and study those ahead of this one? A lot of different things going on the mental side of the sport. Be curious to see how Moreno handles that. Here's the one thing I will say, though, in terms of being in the UFC and doing rematches. Not Brandon Moreno's first rodeo. We all know that. Him and obviously Deiveson Figueiredo have done this 4 times now. Okay, so at this point, he's used to making adjustments. He's used to coming back against guys that have defeated him. So that's territory that Pantoja, though, has not been a part of, because whatever you want to say about that Ultimate Fighter fight, considered an exhibition, not on the legitimate record, so this is kind of a part 2 there. And so far in his career, he's never had a rematch throughout his career. So again, interesting talking points. Should be interesting to see how both of those guys handle it. So now let's get into a few different things here. How we're going to break down today. We're going to do a breakdown of the fight, looking at things like records and such. We'll do a quick look at the tail of the tapes, take a look at what the odds makers think, and then do a prediction of this one here at the end. So let's get in the breakdown. We'll start with the champion, Brandon Moreno. Obviously, great story. I mentioned before he got cut from the UFC. That was actually after his loss to Pantoja. He came back and won the title. Now, one thing to note about that, though, here, guys, those losses that got him cut from the UFC, not that bad of losses. He actually went 1-2, I believe, before being cut. Those losses. Sergio Pettis, who, I mean, we saw what he just did recently in Bellator. Fantastic fighter. He is. When you look at Sergio Pettis' record, a lot of great guys he beat on that, and that is not a bad loss at all. Now, we mentioned Pantoja. Pantoja, even if Moreno gets the win here, Pantoja will be labeled as a former title challenger at the least after this one. So 2 losses that actually aged very well for him. Now let's take a look at Pantoja here. Pantoja, in case nobody's really too familiar, I know that Brandon Moreno, Deiveson Figueiredo really have been the 2 big talking points here of the flyweight division. So Pantoja 25-5 overall, 9-3 in the UFC. One of those victories, as we mentioned, against Moreno. One of the losses on there was to Figueiredo. That fight was a fight of the night, and again, not a bad loss with everything that Figueiredo accomplished in his flyweight career there. And as of late, for Pantoja, 3 straight victories. And on top of that, his last 2 fights, he went home with 2 performance bonuses. He's coming into this one extremely confident. He's coming into this one red hot, and I assume that he has 2 victories earlier over Moreno. I'm sure he can feel real confident coming into this one. Now, let's take a look here at the tail of the tape. And actually, I know we're talking a lot about how about how Pantoja had maybe a slight edge earlier on and stuff with the career with those 2 wins. Tail of the tape all favors Brandon Moreno here. He is 4 years younger. He's 2 inches taller, and he also has a 2.5-inch reach advantage. All of those, I'm sure, may play a factor in this fight. Now, let's go to the odds makers. And the odds makers, they do like Moreno all across the board, but it's pretty close all across the board. DraftKings, official betting sponsor of the UFC, that's up on your screen now. You see the odds there. Moreno minus 190, Pantoja plus 160. FanDuel, Moreno minus 200, Pantoja plus 154. Sportsbetting.ag, Moreno minus 120, Pantoja minus 105. BetMGM, Moreno minus 200, Pantoja at plus 165. And finally, Unibet has Moreno minus 205 and Pantoja at plus 163. Now, one last thing before we get into the predictions. I just want to say, I should state this more often, that when it comes to the odds makers category of these videos, odds are constantly changing. As bets come in, they of course shift. So that's just basically doing this just to give you guys an idea kind of where things are throughout the course of fight week here. All right. Anyway, we did enough rambling. Let's get into it. Time for the prediction here. I think the big question with the prediction is kind of the theme going throughout. Does Pantoja just have Moreno's number? We see that sometimes, guys, don't we? Just sometimes guys, for whatever reason, whether it be a stylistic matchup or whatever, some guys just have other people's numbers, and that could very well be the case, and that's the reason why I think the odds makers have this one so close. If you want, go back and watch their first fight. The UFC has it on their YouTube channel, and in that fight, you'll see that Pantoja, one thing he did very well was his ability to counter, number one, but the way how he did it, he kept everything straight. He didn't get long and loopy with his punches. He wasn't throwing big overhand stuff. Everything was straight down the pipe. Everything was straight down the pocket. Love when fighters fight that way. That will probably be a big key one to this fight. I mean, we saw Brandon Moreno capitalize with Davison Figueiredo's kind of wild style and switching his stances and trying to be all unorthodox. That ability to stay straight sometimes really is a big thing. Pantoja's going to have to look to do that again. However, in this one, though, I'm not going to lie, I think the safe bet is Brandon Moreno, and I'm going to kind of lean that way. He's just been a completely different fighter as of late. He's looked fantastic as of late. I really like that tail of the tape, too. Being the younger fighter. At 29 years old, he's he's in his prime right now. When they met back in 2018, he probably didn't arrive into his prime. He was still learning and growing as a fighter. I just feel like this is Moreno's time. I think this fight will most likely go the distance, you would think. But, I mean, if you guys want to argue, hey, he already beat him twice, I'm betting my money on Pantoja, I don't blame you at all. I just feel like Moreno has really started coming into his own as of late. It's been a great story. Everything he's done with being a Mexican champion. I just feel like everything seems to be riding Moreno's way. A lot of momentum coming into this one. It's very hard to bet against him in this one. So that's why I'm leaning that way. But again, if you guys want to go ahead, take that bet with Pantoja, it would make a lot of sense. It just seems like Moreno's the safer bet to win by way of a decision.